Get ready for the Hustle Northwest podcast, where Oregon's dreamers, doers, and entrepreneurs share their stories. Get inspired, get motivated, and get ready to hustle. Now, here are your hosts, Brian and Carrie.
So today on Hustle Northwest, we are joined by Sarah Ora, founder of Girls Gym in Portland. They are celebrating their 20th year this year in business. They're one of the first female-focused MMA and self-defense training facilities in the city. She's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and former professional MMA fighter, but it doesn't sound like it's former because I think you're still doing it a little bit.
Jiu-Jitsu tournament.
Jiu-Jitsu, okay. And has spent decades competing, coaching, and building a space where women can train with confidence. Her expertise in self-defense and combat sports has made her a respected leader in the community. And today, we're diving into her journey. So thank you, Sarah, for being on our show.
That was a good intro.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah.
Show's over. You don't have to explain anything now.
We said everything.
Yeah. No, but I want to set that up because I know it's sometimes hard to pump yourself up a little bit. So someone's got to do it.
Someone's got to do it.
So tell us about, I think we need to start from the beginning. How you got into martial arts to begin with, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Okay. I started in 1996. That's when I first started martial arts.
How old were you then?
I was 15 years old.
Okay.
And my boyfriend at the time trained in Kimpo at a Kimpo school. And I was interested in his school. So he started teaching me how to do martial arts. We were in my front yard of my childhood home.
So what is Kimpo compared to?
Kimpo is a traditional martial art. And it would be called a hard style martial art. It's more rigid, and it's pretty painful, honestly. And so in Kimpo, they do a lot of striking.
Okay.
There's not a lot of ground fighting. And they also do point sparring. You learn katas, or also known as forms, where people perform a set of techniques by themselves in the air. That's not really something we do in mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
And so that's what he was doing, and he was teaching me how to do those different moves. I don't remember any of it anymore.
The forms.
The forms,
okay,
yeah. I can fake a form pretty good.
You can fake a form?
And then he also taught me some Kali Eskrima, so that's stick fighting.
That sounds even more painful.
that is definitely more painful.
Wow.
We'll do what we call hand sparring. We're wearing gloves, but we try to hit each other's hands with the
I think that
sticks.
there's a Philippines martial arts that uses the sticks.
Yeah.
I think probably something South American stick fighting type stuff too.
There's a salat, I think.
Yeah, I think I've heard that one. Yeah.
Where do a lot of these names come from?
I think it's just the origin of where they kind of developed it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So,
Okay.
definitely.
yeah. A lot of peasant types, martial arts where it's the peasants had to learn how to fight. So they picked up a stick and they're taught themselves a new form of,
Good to know.
Yeah. You pick up anything and turn it into martial arts. You
I'm
just
gonna be
got
this is what I'm
thousands
gonna
of
call
years
it.
to develop it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had looked at a lot of different schools. He was an instructor at his school, and instructors couldn't date students. Great policy, by the way. Great policy.
We should keep that in place.
Yes, I still strongly believe in this.
She's like, I fully support this.
And so I had to find a different school to go to.
Okay.
We checked out all sorts of different martial arts schools in Salem. There was a ninjutsu school at the time on Lancaster. And in Kaiser, I actually grew up in Kaiser. There is a judo school there above the bowling alley.
Okay.
We went and looked at that. And then Straight Blast Gym, which was a Jeet Kune Do school at the time. Most Jeet Kune Do schools actually developed into mixed martial arts schools.
Okay.
And
okay.
That's where I ended up going. And right off the bat, I loved it. I learned how to kickbox. I was learning jiu-jitsu. I was feeling empowered by it. At 15, I was I needed something like that.
Yeah.
I was a shy kid. It wasn't popular. Got made fun of all the time. And so I didn't really feel good about myself at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, I was I had a boyfriend. I was happy with that, but I was still a 15-year-old girl, which is just a...
It comes with
That's a hard
other
year. We have 3 girls. We got to
Oh,
cycle
gosh.
through all
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. It's not
We got
fun.
one coming out of teenage years, one coming into teenage years, and then one that's coming a few years behind
Oh,
that.
gosh, yeah. I have a son and a daughter, but they're in their 20s now. So.
She's like, I'm past all that.
I don't think I am.
She's like, I carry the trauma with me.
It never gets easier. So martial arts, it was so good for me to do, and it changed me. Almost immediately, it changed who I was. I mean, I'm still a really shy person, honestly. If I'm in a unusual group situation, you won't hear me say a single word. I'll just sit there until somebody talks to me and makes me talk to them.
You always got to worry about the quiet ones.
Yeah.
That's what they say in like martial arts too. Worry about the quiet
It's
ones.
true. It's true. There's a lot going on in my head.
Yeah.
It's just not coming out of my
Got
mouth.
it.
So
Fair.
Usually probably for the best if it's not coming out
Yeah.
of my mouth. But it changed my confidence level because starting martial arts, you have to work through things that are
What do you think? What do you think about that? Was it the learning the new skill? Was it the camaraderie you feel within the group, or what was the thing that kind of drove you?
I think that's the crazy thing about martial arts is it's all of that. Like there's not just one thing in martial arts. I tell people like there's not another activity you could do that has so many benefits. And I still haven't, like nobody can tell me an activity you can do that has as many benefits as martial arts does because you gain confidence through learning skills that are challenging. And then as you're practicing those skills, you become better at those skills, right?
Yeah.
So the first time you learn something, you might think you're never, ever going to be able to do that. And then you do it again. And then maybe a week later, you're still practicing it. And maybe the next week, you finally start to feel like you're getting it down. Or maybe the next month or the next year, you're finally starting to get it down. But everything has different time frames that it takes. But you're doing something that you don't think is possible to do, and then you do it enough, and it becomes possible, right? And so that's huge for building confidence. And then you have a team of people around you, because in martial arts, you have that team. It's an individual sport and an individual art, but it takes that team to get good at what you're doing. And so you have all these people help build you up, make you feel good. So you've got that going for you for the confidence.
Yeah.
And then eventually you learn like you're putting these skills to use against other people. You're practicing, you're fighting, and you start to like develop these fighting skills and realize that you can overcome people physically. I mean, that's huge
powerful in
for
itself,
confidence,
Yeah.
for anybody, but especially a female, and even more so a 15-year-old female,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and so because like when you're, I wasn't a 15-year-old female, but when you're a kid, it's like you see these other kids and you're always comparing yourself to them, and like what can I do compared to what they can do, and you always feel like, especially growing up, you always feel less than what you actually are sometimes, and so being able to explore that a little bit, you find out stuff about yourself you would have never thought about.
Yeah.
Because of your confidence level. So that's interesting. When you got into there, you said it was almost like pre-MMA as far as like the style goes, where you're borrowing like certain aspects of different like skill sets, right? Is that how it was formed? Is like we're going to take some judo, we're going to take some wrestling and some boxing and kind of form it into something new?
Yeah. So the very first UFC, I think that was in 1993. I started training in 96. UFC was in its very early days at that time. It like even after that, it was barely making it because of how violent it was.
Yeah.
The first UFC, they took different traditional martial arts and put them against each other. Not just traditional martial arts. So you would see Savate, French kickboxing. They had boxers. They had judo people and jiu-jitsu people. Maybe not the first UFC for judo, but they took a variety of martial arts styles and pitted them against each other.
Yeah.
And over time, they saw which martial arts styles were winning regularly, and those martial arts styles developed into mixed martial arts. So we have Muay Thai kickboxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Western boxing.
I feel sorry for the Tai Chi guy that went in there.
Yes. Well, it was crazy to watch the first ones because one person came out like he was wearing one boxing glove because he still wanted to be able to grab, but he was a boxer, so he wanted to be able to punch as hard as he could.
I need the softest punching thing. This guy's going to really regret going up against me. My soft punching. Yeah.
And then you've got the people in their gis, I mean, it doesn't look like what MMA looks like today. It looks so different. Maybe it was the second or third UFC. There's video of a guy. One guy's on the ground. The other guy is in what we would call cross-sides top. He's facing the guy's lower body and punching him directly in the groin. That is not allowed now. But it's crazy to see, like,
you're like, what are you watching?
Yes, exactly.
I'm sure they've toyed with it, like, that would
Should we bring that back?
That would get really good ratings.
People seem to like that.
Yeah, it's interesting how it's evolved into like bare knuckle matches too now.
Or the slap fighting. Oh my gosh.
I can't do. I mean, I've seen some of the slap fights, and I will like actually watch the whole thing because I want to see who gets knocked out.
It's so painful though.
It looks terrible.
That's a brain injury that's happening there.
For no point either. No point. I mean,
for no point.
It's like I want a slap fight. Really.
I feel like if you're punching somebody, there's maybe more of a point. I don't know. That's probably skewed from my mixed martial arts experience, but
that makes sense. That does not.
Yeah. I wouldn't want anybody to slap me. It looks way worse than getting punched.
It's interesting how, like, even at one point they had the girl fights come in too, and the early days of that looks so much different than it is now.
We were talking about that this morning.
Yeah, and some of them, I mean, it's starting to become they are like the main card, and some of these the stuff now. So that's really cool. And we were watching the Jake Paul fight, and they were. Most of those fights were so boring, but the girl fight that was on there, it was so bloody, and they were going at it so hard.
Brian's like, I was more into that.
That felt like the main card right there. Yeah. So there is a definite progression and what people think women like fighting is like to where it is now, and it's brutal now. It's what people are kind of tuning in to see. Because there is a lot more training, and the gyms like you are introducing this skill set to them that they're gravitating towards, and there is a bigger group of women that actually want to go in and do this now.
Yeah. So the crazy thing is, when I first started looking for fights for my own fighters, I would reach out to promoters, and let's see, it was probably like 2009 maybe. And the first question that would be asked of me about my female fighters is, do you have a picture? What do they look like?
Oh.
And that's what mattered when I was putting women on cards in the beginning. Now, skill set matters. Like, I think because of how mixed martial arts is, there is still a little bit of that, but it's not the same as it was. It was pretty terrible to have that be the primary thing.
Jello pudding fights compared to what it is now. Like, it's more of like a sideshow before. Yeah.
It was hard for women in the earlier days. I mean, it still is, but it was extra hard because appearance mattered so much more. And I just don't think that was the case for men. I wasn't putting men on cards, so I guess I didn't have anybody ask me what the men look like, but I don't think they were asking that primarily.
Interesting. So the evolution of the gym itself, did it kind of coincide with the rules of the MMA as far as what you guys were teaching, like a skill? At what point did it become more of like a sport focused?
So we still have pretty strong self-defense focus because while I have competitors, I wouldn't call us a competition school.
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to compete and have that experience because you're putting yourself under pressure that you wouldn't otherwise, even at the gym. Like, you definitely have pressure at the gym, but it's not the same as everything you go through when you step into a competition. But my primary reason for teaching women martial arts is for exactly what I got from it, which is that confidence that you build up, the resilience that comes with learning martial arts. some people like to come train with us because you get to get your aggression out, in
Yeah.
a very healthy way compared to like,
It's an outlet.
you shouldn't run around just punching things, but you can
Like,
come
you want to be in a slap fight with me? Let's go.
And so I don't know that I'd say like we let people know rules, but every competition has different rules. MMA, you can throw punches. Jiu-Jitsu, you can't throw punches. So as a trained combat sport competitor, you need to be able to think well enough to know the rules in the moment of a competition, right? I need to know that if I'm in a jiu-jitsu tournament, I can't just throw a punch at somebody. And so we don't necessarily teach things differently, but if somebody's getting ready for a competition, I'm like, well, you can't throw an elbow in this competition, you know?
Or if someone's getting mugged on the street, like, there's no rules.
Exactly.
You can do whatever you need to.
Use all of your training.
Yeah, and that's something my dad used to always say to me, because he's kind of chauvinistic, is, you know, as a fighter, you're out there fighting, but you have to follow these rules. And so the street fighter, he's going to be able to come out and beat you because he's not following rules. Like, he might pick up this brick on the ground and hit you with that brick. And I'm like, well, what would stop me from grabbing that same brick and hitting him, right? Like, why would I not grab that brick? I don't have to follow rules. I choose to follow rules. You know, I'm a trained fighter, so I can make those decisions in that moment.
I guess the idea is like you're so structured in how you train something that you can't deviate from it is probably the thought process for someone outside.
Right. But yeah, that's not the case at all. Like, we follow different rules in every competition. So
speaking of following rules, you got into MMA as far as an actual like fighting. So your confidence must have been up to a certain point to be able to like jump into, I actually want to go and test my skills against someone else.
Yeah.
So at what point, what age did you do that at?
So my first fight was in 2005. So I would have been 24 years old. And I had wanted to fight for a while. When I first fought, women could not fight in every state yet. There were states that men could fight and women couldn't fight. There were states that MMA was still illegal. New York was like one of the last states to legalize MMA.
Oh, actually.
And women would have 2-minute rounds and men would get 5-minute rounds. Like, this was one of the rules in California, I believe. I still don't really even understand that because the shorter rounds actually encourage more kickboxing than jiu-jitsu. And I think kickboxing is way worse for you. So
because when you have 5 minutes, you got, okay, I can pace myself with 5 minutes. 2 minutes, I got to go all out.
You got to go all out. You don't have time to get to the ground and do things on the ground, you know? And I think kickboxing is way more dangerous and damaging to you than jiu-jitsu is. So I don't really understand the thought process behind that, but the rules were different for women and men in those early days.
How many actual rounds did you do? Was it like five 2-minute rounds or something? Or?
I think it was 3 2-minute rounds.
Oh, so just 3.
Yeah,
wow.
Women just did not get very much. But the 5-minute rounds generally are like a championship fight.
Okay.
Or now for UFC, I believe their main event and co-main event, whether it's for a belt or not, is 5-minute rounds. I'm pretty sure. So
how was it going into your first fight? Do you remember it?
Yeah, my first fight I remember really well. I fought in Eugene, and
you were 24?
I was 24 years old. I'd been trying to get a fight for a while, so I knew I wanted to fight for quite a long time. And I went down. My weigh-ins were the same day as the fight. I had actually cut quite a bit of weight to make the weight. After I had kids, I had insulin resistance, and I put on a lot of weight. And so then when I wanted to fight, the first opponent they found for me was at 165. And I think I was walking around at like 185 at the time. So I didn't have like the proper training for weight cutting at the time. I went on like a vegetarian diet, which made me very weak because I didn't know how to properly eat and get enough protein. I lost the weight pretty quickly. The night before, I spent a lot of time in the sauna, and I think I cut like 6 more pounds maybe.
Wow.
And then I weighed in for my fight. I saw my opponent, and she had the biggest muscles.
It's like coming out of the flu and going into and fight someone. It's like, I'm just so We had a flu for like 2 weeks. So now I'm going to go fight someone?
So here I am with tiny muscles, and she's there with big muscles. And, you know, I can't see very well because I have vision issues. So I asked my friend who was with me, I'm like, are her arms as big as I think they are? And my friend said, that's exactly what my friend said. She's like, no, Sarah, you're fine.
It's fine.
Yeah,
it's all
well,
going to be fine. Just go.
we got into the cage. I saw how big her arms actually were.
Some friend.
Yeah.
But after I made weight, we got food. I told my friend, because I hadn't been eating much, I was like, make sure I stop halfway through because I got a burger. You know, I hadn't had meat in weeks. So, and at the end, like I ate. And then I stopped and I'm like, I just finished everything. You didn't stop me partway through this. And she said, well, you look so happy eating.
Carrie does that for me too. It's like, just stop me. Quit. Don't let me eat that.
I'm like,
shit.
but you look so happy. Like, I just don't want to get in that muscle.
So I finished the food. I don't think that affected anything for me.
Wait, who won the fight?
I won the fight.
You won the fight.
I won
That's
the fight.
awesome.
Yeah, it was. So before going into that fight, I was like sitting in the back, and I felt this rush over me, like just a rush, and I was unfamiliar with this feeling.
It's like an adrenaline rush.
Yeah,
okay.
and I'd never done anything.
Look at her eyes light up. Yeah.
I'd really never done anything that like created that feeling. I was a non-athletic person my whole life. I didn't play sports. I played one season of basketball. It was terrible. And so it was just like this like weird feeling under my skin. And it was really controlled. It felt good, you know. Yeah. And then I went out and I fought the first round. I took my opponent down, threw punches. I grabbed an arm. I sat back for an arm bar. I had everything I needed for an arm bar. So the arm's fully extended. She's not tapping. And I realized she wasn't going to tap, and I wasn't prepared to break an arm yet. Like, I was not in that spot.
What
mentally.
do you mean yet? Like, you are now?
Well, I would break somebody's arm now if they did not tap. Yes. Because in this sport, we know it is our job to tap. Yeah. And if you choose not to tap, that's what I would never not tap. I would always tap and not have my bones broken, right? Yeah. But if they make that choice, it's their choice. And so
I'm shook.
And but they would also break my arm if I didn't tap. So it goes both ways.
It seems very counterintuitive to me. I'd be like, I'm out. They're like, we didn't even start
yet. Carrie would do it just because the sound. Like, I don't want to break her arm. I don't want to hear that sound.
Those are definitely things that you don't want to go through. But that took a lot. I went through a lot of those things where I was not mentally prepared to do what I needed to do in a fight. So on that one, I bailed on that arm. I went for the other arm. I didn't get it.
Was your coach like, what are you doing? Snap her arm.
Well, so the funny thing about my fight is when I first told people I wanted to fight that I trained with, I'd been training for a long time, 8 years, I think, at the time. There would be guys who would go in to fight, and they'd say they wanted to fight, and they'd be fighting in 6 months. All my training partners were like, oh, yeah, cool, that sounds good. And then I finally got the fight, and suddenly all my training partners were like, no, Sarah, you shouldn't fight. You're not ready to fight. It was because I was a female. Like, they would have thrown a guy in there in a second, you know? And then some of my training partners would like try to show me why I shouldn't fight. Like, it's good to put people through a really hard training session when you're getting ready to fight. You got to punch them. You got to do all that. But I'd be with these guys that were 40 pounds heavier than me, just like beating up on me.
Yeah.
So when I went to fight, I had my husband there, a guy I trained, one of my friends, and a couple family members. And that was all that was there. But my husband, he's also trained, so he coached me in that. It was the only fight that he ever went to. His nerves and his adrenaline were at least as bad as mine, I think. He even ended up yelling at the judges during the fight. But I had my first round. First round ended. I didn't break her arm like I should have. I sat down on... in between rounds, and I said to my friend and my husband, I'm like, I don't think I can stand back up. And they're like, no, sir, you got to stand back up. And I'm like, I really do not think I can stand back up. And they're like, you have to go out there and keep going. I'm like, you know what? You're right. And I got up, my legs felt terrible, and I went out and I fought again. And then, I got really scratched up in that fight. The person I was fighting had Krav Maga experience.
Oh.
And she was like clawing at me. So I had scratch marks on my face afterwards.
Wow.
And then that round just went on. It was mostly a back and forth striking round. We had one more round. Same sort of thing. And then the round ended. It went to the judge's decision. But I had it was really obvious that I had got the best of that fight. Yeah. And so everybody knew that I was going to be the one that was announced. My husband, my friend were there like, yeah, you got this. And then they took us out to the middle. They raised my hand and they called her name.
What?
And it was just an accident. They meant to call my name. But it was like, so that was my first fight experience. And then I went into the back room and I sat down and my husband says he thought I was like dying because I just laid down and I just didn't
all the
move.
adrenaline just crashed, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, but it was a really good experience and it made me feel so good about myself. And then after that, everybody that didn't show up to support me was like, I knew you'd do it. You know, I knew you could do
You're like,
this.
did you?
Yeah.
Did you know I could do it?
And suddenly everybody wanted to train with me. You know?
It's
And
funny
it's
how
like,
that works.
Funny how it works. Yeah. Of course,
So-
they were supporting me the whole time.
So it's interesting. You went into it feeling weak, and you're going up against a opponent that's probably twice your size as far as like muscle goes. And MMA is always interesting because it's so like it's unlike other sports where it's like you've got to be in peak physical condition, and that's the person who's always going to win. It's technique, or someone comes in with extra training or just experience, or some sort of combination of those things. And so you can walk in with the best physical training and get knocked out in the first punch.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how that works out, and for you, it sounds like your skill set was more than that other opponent, despite the fact that she was probably better built than you.
Yeah, for sure. I would say fitness definitely has a big contributing factor, right? But when you take two similar skill sets and you let's say you have two very similar skill sets and then you have somebody who's more fit and athletic, that person generally will have the advantage, right? But jiu-jitsu can cut or MMA or striking, at any moment, somebody who has that better skill set, no matter that physical advantage, can take advantage of the techniques they know and they're able to use, you know? And so I'm pretty cocky in that way. I like to try to pretend like I'm humble. Well, it's like a mixed martial arts person thing, actually. I think we all try to pretend like we're humble, but we really have pretty big egos.
You're like, I can break your arm.
Yeah. So in competition, I feel pretty good because I have more experience than most people. There are not a lot of people. Next year will be my 30th year of training.
Wow.
There's not a lot of, especially women, who have that much experience,
How many fights have you been in?
So I don't remember exactly how many mixed martial arts fights I've been in. I think I had around 10 total MMA fights.
Oh, wow.
I did get my second to my last fight. I fought Miesha Tate. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but she was a UFC fighter for a while.
Okay.
And she knocked me out in the second round. 8 seconds into the second round, she threw a head kick that put me to sleep. And then she hit me about 8 more times after that. It broke my orbital bone. And I had a terrible concussion after that. It was pretty
Was that the
rough.
first time you got knocked out? Or?
That was the first time I had been knocked out. I had been TKO'd quite a few times. So what I would say is I was not the best MMA fighter because I struggled with hurting people, right? In my third fight, I was on top of somebody going to throw an elbow. And you can see in the video, I stopped myself because I thought, well, I don't have to throw an elbow here. I can just throw punches. Well, that fight ended up getting stopped early in the other person's favor.
Oh.
And I really could have thrown elbows right there and probably ended the fight, but I chose not to. So it was a learning experience for me. I was like, she would have done that to me. So I need to be willing to do that to her.
Is there like a switch that has to be flipped? Like this is my normal self, and then this is my in-cage self.
Yes.
It's totally different.
Yeah, I think so. I started seeing a sports psychologist for it for a period of time because you have to figure out how to turn that on. You don't have to be a killer all the time in your life, right? But when you walk into the cage, like, the person who looks at it as life or death is going to have a better chance than the person who's just looking at it as a sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because so what I tell people is you want to try to kill people within the rules.
Okay.
Like, there's rules to follow, but you should be trying to kill them if you want to have the upper hand, you know? So,
you sound like a motivational speaker. You could be talking about all sorts of like industries like that.
We're going to learn how to kill within the rules.
So was that the like a turning point for you? Like, I got to get out of this as far as MMA goes, is like, I can't get hurt like this constantly.
Yeah. So my second to my last fight, after I had a really terrible concussion after that knockout and then getting hit quite a few more times.
Was she supposed to hit you that many times after you were down?
Well, so it's complicated because
Is she out? Is she not out? Let me just 5 more times. Yeah.
You would hope that somebody sees somebody completely unconscious, right? I was propped up against the cage. My arms were out. It was very clear I wasn't doing anything. You would hope that somebody would say, they're unconscious. I'm going to stop.
Like the humanity side. Yeah.
But at the same time, we're taught to continue to fight until the ref stops the fight. Because what happens if I would have woke up, right? And would have came back somehow. She would have
Which has happened tons of times.
It happens, yeah. And she would have had to keep fighting. So really the bigger problem was that the ref was like looking the other direction or something while she was hitting me. So, and that's how my orbital bone got broken, because I got knocked out. She kicked me on the right side of my face. The left side of my face had the broken orbital bone. And so
my face hurts. Listening to that. Meanwhile, I'm over here stubbing my toe like,
Hey, I hate stubbing my toe. But I had people competing after that, and I went to the competition, and it's 2 months of feeling like I was drunk, like I was floating on a cloud. I couldn't coach them, and that was really like my realization, like I can be a fighter or I can be a coach.
Okay.
And honestly, I'm a much, much better coach than I am a fighter. And then I had another fight afterwards. So I got knocked out in October. I fought my next time in February.
What year is this?
2000. So I got knocked out October 2009.
Okay.
Fought February 2010.
Okay.
I was standing in the cage, and that was the first time I was ever in the cage. And I said, I really don't want to be in here. Like, I'm standing across, staring at my opponent, thinking, I don't want to do this. Like, that's a bad spot to be. You're about to get in a fight. There's no way out of it unless I want to embarrass myself by just quitting, right? So I went out and I fought, and my striking was the best it had ever been at that time. Up until then, everybody knew me for my jiu-jitsu. And I came out and I did some great strikes, and I still didn't want to be there. And I took a terrible shot to go to take her down. I left my neck out, and she caught me with a choke at the time. And I tapped. It was my last fight. And I realized that I just shouldn't be in there anymore.
I think it happens to a lot of those fighters, though. Even the ones like there's some that are like these guys never get knocked out, and the first chance they actually get knocked out, they're knocked out every time after that. It's like a mental thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I also ended up developing some sort of I think it's called recurrent concussion syndrome or something like that.
What's that?
Where every time I would get bumped for a while, everything would just go black. So it would be like times when I wouldn't have like had things like go black. I'd do a takedown. I'd get taken down. Head would shake a little bit. Everything kind of like closed in.
Oh, wow. Me. It's like the light switch is like just really easy to get turned on.
Yeah. So I think that might happen to those fighters too.
Yeah.
Because you don't give your brain enough time to heal, you know? And at that time when I was fighting, like CTE wasn't really a known about thing, you know.
What's like, CTE?
I don't know that.
Like concussion, like
Was that like
stance?
that Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah.
Not Aaron Rodgers. What? Hernandez. He was a football player.
Yeah, so sports
Aaron
players get
Hernandez?
it all the time.
Okay.
It's really common, and it's from the damage we take to our brain.
Got it.
And I don't know if anything's changed now, but you can't like test for it. It's not something they can see until after you've died, and they like look at your brain.
Oh, that's convenient.
Yeah. Now maybe that's changed since I
Yeah.
like researched it last. I'm not sure, but
Because there's no headgear. I mean, it's not like it's. I mean, there's like the Olympic boxers. They have headgear, and they have very strict requirements. But like MMA doesn't have headgear
yeah.
or anything.
And honestly, I don't think I would want to wear headgear. Like, I've put headgear on a few times,
Yeah.
and it like gets in the way of your vision and your ability to like move your head around. At least in my opinion, it does.
and the weighted gloves is actually what I think contributes to a lot more concussions than actual like bare knuckle type
Okay.
things.
Yeah. So I'm sure that like I've had a lot of damage to my brain over the years. So
Wow.
I've donated. I have a thing where I've donated my brain to the Boston Brain Institute. I think I have this little card that I carry around on me.
Wow.
So if anything ever happens, they can have my brain. And they have a lot fewer female brains than they do male brains.
Oh, interesting.
So.
Yeah, good. Like for like sports related type things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a cool transition there. So you've decided at that point that you're going to be focusing mostly on training.
Yeah.
So tell me about your gym.
So my gym, we opened in 2005. We've been open for 20 years this year. When I first started, I was still working. I worked in accounting, and then I was running the gym part-time. And it's just grown. In 2017, I believe. Yeah, 2017, we moved to our current spot, which is a full-time spot. So up until then, I was subleasing a space. When we moved there, it was huge because we had so much better of a location, and people started learning about us and coming in the doors. And so we have classes most of our classes are for adults,
Yeah.
but we also have youth classes. We have a few teen classes.
How big is your space?
Our space is a little over 2,500 square feet.
Wow, that's
It's
huge.
2 spaces right next to each other. So we have one room that's completely matted for training, and then we have another room that's like our lobby area that we can also do some training in.
So you have multiple classes going on at once then.
We could, but the other area is pretty small, so we
Yeah.
would have to have a pretty like limited sort of class. We generally have like 15 to 20 people in per class.
Mhm.
We have classes 7 days per week. We have morning classes, evening classes. We teach a lot of kickboxing. We have jiu-jitsu classes. We have a mixed martial arts class. We do self-defense workshops pretty regularly. And so we have a huge variety of people. I think our oldest member right now is 68 years old.
That's neat.
So, yeah, so it's for everybody,
Yeah.
you know. Everybody does it for different reasons. Most of our members are there for the community, to help them build confidence. They're looking for a workout. And then after they start training, they start to learn more about martial arts and understand how martial arts can affect and improve your life. And so they start for like the reason of like wanting to get fit, and then they realize all the different benefits that come with martial arts and stick with it and start becoming a martial artist, which is an amazing thing to
Interesting.
watch.
Yeah. So do you have women that are coming in and kind of following in your footsteps as far as like I want to get into like competing?
Yeah. So we have quite a few people who do jiu-jitsu competitions. I really push jiu-jitsu competitions because the risk of injury is pretty low in a jiu-jitsu competition because you're not punching each other.
Yeah.
At least it's not much higher than what you're doing in the gym. You know, like there's always the potential for injury. You could always twist a knee, just like you can twist a knee walking, you know. But we're not striking each other in jiu-jitsu. So I really, really push people to do jiu-jitsu tournaments, step out of their comfort zone. But mixed martial arts, I have really high standards for that. I expect people to train 6 days a week. One of those days can just be a conditioning day. I expect them to have a strict rest day where their body actually gets to rest and heal. Like they can't go snowboarding on their rest day, right? I expect them to eat right. I expect them to sleep right because the person they're going to fight is probably doing all those things.
Yeah.
And you're training for one specific person usually. So you want to respect that person and be giving it that fight and that training everything you can to get ready for it.
So are you like helping set, or they help set up their own fights, and that's the goal, is they're training for that specific fight, or they're training in general?
So I want people, like, they should always be training.
Yeah.
And then I arrange the fights for people. Okay. So I'll talk to the promoter and set up the fight, try to find an ideal opponent for them. And then they will specifically, like, when a fight comes up, usually you do like a 4 to 6 week fight camp that you're training for. Okay. So for 4 to 6 weeks, that's when you're training that 6 times a week.
Okay.
So that I don't expect all the time.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. That's what I was wondering. Like, wow.
But sometimes people will become competition focused people.
Okay.
And when they don't have a competition come up, they kind of like dwindle a little bit in their training. And that's really unfortunate because that's the time when you get to build your skills, learn new things, have more fun, dabble in different areas, and just like become a better fighter. Yeah. And then for that fight camp of 4 to 6 weeks, you're just pushing yourself, improving your cardio, making everything better. But it's not as much of a learning time as the time when you're training, not getting ready for a fight.
Where do the fights take? Are they in Oregon or are they out of Oregon?
So there's fights that happen in Oregon quite a bit. One of our bigger, we have a big amateur event called the FCFF that happens at the Roseland. Yeah. They've been around forever. I don't know how many years, but probably pretty close or around the same amount of time my gym has been open. And then there will be other big events that come through Oregon sometimes, but very often when you're fighting in MMA, you have to travel to fight. Jiu-Jitsu, there's a lot of Jiu-Jitsu tournaments everywhere all the time now. So
like you can throw a stone at it.
It's just it's become really popular. Jiu-Jitsu has. So there's almost a tournament like every weekend around here now. Wow. But MMA happens a lot. But when you're fighting, they'll usually fly you to the fight so that they can match opponents up ideally. So.
Yeah. It's going to be tough. I mean, someone who wants to do it is different than getting them mentally ready for, like, are you ready to get punched really hard? And, like, have
I don't know that I
injuries.
Could do that. I've been thinking about, as you've been talking, I'm sitting here going, I don't know that I could be mentally prepared to be hit.
Like, unless it's something you really, really don't like.
No, then I want to hit them, but not like, I don't know that I could. Like I said, it's very counterintuitive, like, because I think like you just naturally want to protect yourself. So to be able to like unlock that part of your brain to go in and be like, I'm going to go get my ass kicked today. Or like,
well, I definitely look back to the fact that I wanted to fight and look back to that time. And in that time, it felt totally like something I wanted to do. Now I see people getting ready for fights. Like sometimes I'll have people on competing and they're in the back, they're getting ready for a jiu-jitsu tournament. And I'm watching these people warm up for their fight and I'm watching them thinking, what is wrong with them? Why would anybody want to do that?
Let's get to the root of what's happening with you right now.
But I've when I train people, sometimes people will walk in the door wanting to fight. That's always, to me, kind of a warning sign. Like they don't even know what they're getting into, right? They've never trained
put me in,
before.
I'm ready.
Yeah. I'm like, just wait until somebody hits you hard, right? Like it's going to take one hard punch and you're going to be frazzled. You're not going to know what you're going to do because you've never been hit hard before. Yeah. And it changes things when you start getting hit hard, you know. I had a fight where it was the only time in a fight where I was on the ground and somebody was mounted on top of me. And she started throwing punches down. And I had drilled that so many times in the gym, right? But nobody was punching me, making my head bounce off the mat in the gym because you can't do that to your training partners. So it was the first time in my life I'm laying on my back with somebody mounted on top of me, throwing punches down, and my head's like a basketball on
You
the
can't
mats.
think.
You can't think. I just spun and gave up my back because it was the like smartest thing I could do, and I got choked for it. But I didn't get knocked out. So I guess being choked down is a lot better than being knocked out.
Wow.
But yeah, now I look at it and I don't want to get punched that hard. I love to spar in a controlled setting where I can quit if I want to quit, you know, but
when you're in a cage,
you're
like
in a cage, you
And you've recently fought as far as like jiu-jitsu, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I did a jiu-jitsu tournament about 3 weeks ago. Prior to that, I had done one a year and a half before, and then I hadn't done any competition. So when I did the one a year and a half ago, it had been 13 years since I had competed. So it was kind of crazy because when I compete now, I have to compete in the expert division because my skill level. So I had not competed for 13 years. And then I had to step in and compete in the expert division with other people who had been competing regularly.
Oh, yeah.
For this one recently, it was pretty exciting. I flew to Phoenix for the competition. And there were, at the time, 2 people registered in my division. So 2 people in my weight class, my age group, and my experience level. That is so hard to find as a female.
Yeah.
So then I was there getting ready for that. I was trying to warm up. I say trying because it was hard for me to even move because I was dealing with so many nerves at the time. My husband was warming up with me, and I just wanted to sit down on the ground. You know, I didn't want to. My legs were weak.
Just from the nerves?
Just from the nerves.
Wow.
That saying "weak at the knees," like I truly was feeling that because my knees just wanted to just collapse underneath me. So then we're getting ready. We're waiting for the competition to start. At one point, my husband was like, "Sarah, you got to stop moving. Like, you cannot move nonstop." And I look down and my foot's just tapping. And I'm not somebody who moves when I'm not, like, I'm pretty lazy. I'll just sit still forever. Like, I don't have to move. But in that moment, my foot could just not stop tapping because I was so nervous.
Yeah.
And then the way this event works, you're watching this app on your phone, and you see what time you have to show up to your
Because it's
mat.
like bracket.
It's brackets,
Okay.
yeah. So there's supposed to be 2 people in my division, and I'm like sitting by the mat waiting, and I see somebody walk over kind of limping, and you don't really know who is in your division. There's a lot of people there. There's women competing in different experience levels, so I can't necessarily look and be like, that person I'm competing with, right? But this woman, she's like limping. I'm like, that's not good. And my husband's like, she looks kind of old. So rude because he means like in my division.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm like, but she wouldn't have competed yet. Like, why would she be hurt right now? Because if she's in my division, she hasn't competed yet.
Yeah.
She hurt herself warming up. And I'm like, that's what happens in the over 40 division.
Wow.
You hurt yourself warming up.
So the killer side of you is like, I'm going to focus on that leg right there.
So she ended up not being able to compete, which was terrible because now, like, we're so excited. We have this division of 3 people, which is so hard to come by for us. And now it's come down to just 2 people. So once that happened, then it made it the best 2 out of 3. So we would be competing at least 2 times. And if one of us won one and the other won the other, then we would have a third match. So the very first match we went out, and I got the takedown, and then I ended up in her guard, and she was trying to attack. As soon as her legs opened up, I got past, and a lot happened. All sorts of stuff happened. But in the end, I won that match on points. Okay. And so I felt pretty good about that. She was a tough opponent, really, really good opponent. Their team is a really good team. Their entire team was winning their matches. And so then we had a little break, and then we had to go again. And so then we went out again, and we're like fighting for the takedown. And I'm so tired that at one point I catch myself like hanging on her, kind of resting on her.
You're like, can you just stand here for a minute?
And in that moment, she got the takedown. But when she took me down and went right into my guard. So my legs were wrapped around her. My specialty is an arm bar. Everybody knows me for my arm bars. I get arm bars all the time.
What's an arm bar?
Arm bar is when you get, you isolate one arm and you get it extended across your body, and then you lift your hips up, which, or you can apply pressure to the arm that overextends it. And if they don't tap, their elbow would break. That's what an arm bar is. And so I got a very beautiful arm bar, and she had to tap for that one. And that was about 1.5 minutes in. Thank God, because if anything else had happened, I was so exhausted. I don't know where we would have.
So at that level, you kind of have to know where your skill or your breaking point is with your arm, and like how far can I take this, and can I still get out of it?
Yeah. And you really start to understand that, I mean, we still make mistakes sometimes, like even in training, where I'm like, I think I can get out of that, and then there'll be a little tear, and you're like, oh shit, I just.
And it happens as soon as you hit 40.
Yeah.
It's something about women. I always say this. I'm like, as soon as I hit 40, things started breaking.
Oh my God. Yeah. Everything takes so much longer to heal.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm breaking stuff all the time. So.
I get something out of the fridge, like, oh, I should have moved like that.
I know.
Yeah.
I slept wrong again. Dang it. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. I wake up with neck pain all the time.
So do your kids compete?
No. So my kids don't. Well, my son wants to train more. He often gives me a hard time because I did not force him to train, but I didn't want to push him away from it.
Yeah.
And so he trained when he was young, took a long break from training. He's trying to train more now. He loves to train with me. But my daughter's not really interested in it at all, which is hard for me because she's 5 foot, like, that's how tall she is. Yeah. She did train when she was little. So if she throws a punch, she throws a hard punch. But she doesn't really have that interest. She's 21. Maybe she'll develop that interest later on and want me to teach her, want to come train at my gym,
Isn't it hard when your kids don't follow what you're doing? Like, I asked my kids, I'm like, do you want to be a realtor? They're like, no. I'm like, what? Why? It's the best job ever. They're like, no, we see how much you work. We're good.
Yeah. I did accounting, and I worked at my dad's accounting firm for a long time, and that's really what he wanted me to do.
Very different. That's a very different
oh my God.
way you went.
I hate accounting so much. So much. And my mom's a nurse. She would have liked to see me go into nursing, but I wanted to be a teacher my whole life. I hated school. And so when I ended up finding martial arts, it was perfect, because I get to teach, and I get to teach something I love. And I get to change lives at least as much as teachers do, because I can watch how it changes people all the time.
Yeah.
When I was 16, I had a birthday party that I had invited all these people to. But like I said, I wasn't a popular kid.
Yeah.
So I had invited all these people. I hired a band to come play at my 16th birthday party. And there were 4 people there, which were my martial arts coaches. Nobody else showed up.
Oh.
It was terrible. I felt terrible, right?
It shows the camaraderie you built up with that, and that where it's the people that actually care about
the people that care. And but at that time, it felt pretty devastating, right? Mm-hmm. Now I can't hide from my birthday. I don't want to celebrate my birthday, and everybody knows when it is, and I have all these people celebrating me, and it's pretty crazy, the way things can change. And so I try to tell the teenagers that I teach often about that story, because I'm like, what you feel now, it's not who you're going to be later in life. You get to choose who you're going to be. And I just imagine if I had confidence when I was 15, like I do now, life would have been so much easier, I would have been so much happier of a person. And all that was how I thought. It wasn't who I was. That didn't change. It was just the thought process that was going on in my head. Yeah.
Well, it's amazing you've built this community where you're at with your own thing. How many people do you have right now, do you think?
Around 150 members.
wow.
Yeah.
So are you taking new students, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we're always taking new students, and we offer the first class free, so people come in, try a free class. Hopefully they love it. Usually they love it.
Yeah.
We have a really awesome team. So I have 8 other coaches. So my husband and myself, and then we have 8 additional staff that help coach. And every one of those coaches started at Girls Gym and worked their way up into a coaching role. And so they've all demonstrated like this desire to help people grow and like an excitement to teach people martial arts. And so somebody comes in on their first day and they're always so nervous, like nobody comes in not feeling like terrified of what they're walking into, because it's so foreign to most people, and then they come in and they get to punch stuff and all of a sudden they're like, I've been missing this. Like, how long have I been missing this?
That's funny.
It takes a little bit more to get people into jiu-jitsu usually, because jiu-jitsu is really close contact, and you're like, laying on top of each other sometimes. And that's not something, especially for women. Usually we didn't wrestle like with people growing up, and so that can be a little bit more intimidating. So often I get people into jiu-jitsu because they started kickboxing.
Yeah.
They're training with people. They meet people that do jiu-jitsu at the gym, and then they get convinced to try it that way.
Okay. Very cool. So where do we find you on social media, and how do people reach you as far as contacting you, find out a little bit more about the gym, or just kind of get some behind the scenes of it?
Yeah. So on social media, we're Girls Gym PDX on Instagram.
Okay.
And so most of our social media is Instagram. My Instagram is Oriza BJJ, and every once in a while you'll see some cool stuff there.
Okay.
See a lot more cool stuff on the Girls Gym Instagram.
All right.
And then also checking out our website, which is girlsgympdx.com.
Awesome. Well, Sarah, it was great meeting you. This was amazing to hear your backstory and some of your fights that you had.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's always good ammo for like grandkids too, when you tell them like, Grandma used to like beat people up. So hopefully you got that to look forward to.
Oh yeah, I already use it against my son.
All right. Well, appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks.